It's the 25th of September 2024. I'm Dana. Welcome, everybody. Hope you're doing well on this Wednesday night. Yeah, you can call in. No guarantee the phone's going to work. It's 709-589-4406 here in Canada. There is a crack in the bottom of my screen. I noticed when I push it really hard because I was hanging on to it and the screen was blinking on me. It settled down, so maybe that's a temporary solution. And we're here in Canada, so that's 709-589-4406. Alrighty, so we got Taiwan is importing food from a nuclear wasteland of all places. Now they've removed a lot of restrictions. The stories are kind of all over the place from the major media. There is some symmetries to it, but generally the story is all over the place. I'm showing a very low stream. That's recovered now. Taiwan will ease restrictions on imports of Japanese food products, including seafood, use this screen actually. Today, the Taiwanese authorities announced the relaxation of import control measures now they've been shipping food in there and it's been going through different countries and relabeled and going into Taiwan. Taiwan has fined many vendors over the years for importing food from the nuclear wasteland. They had a referendum in 2018. We covered it for 6 or 7, 8 days or something. On should food from the nuclear wasteland be imported. And the pro-nuclear community worldwide participated in the assault and poisoning of the Taiwanese victims, which is everybody that shops at a grocery store in Japan. Will Taiwan cause massive health and death by importing nuke food from the nuclear wasteland? And clearly that's what happens when you do that. And so one of the reasons they say they're importing all the food from the nuclear wastelands is they want to get on good trading terms with Japan. So you're willing to poisoning your entire population so some corporations can save importation fees? Wouldn't it be better to put them in jail for the rest of their lives and keep the health of your country? How can you sell out the health of the country for a couple of corporations and a couple of politicians? How does that actually work? How is that not destructive to the country and to the healthcare system? You're going to drive the healthcare system now through the roof, right? Oh. Following the accident at Fukushima, well, he built it on a fault line where there's over 1,000 serious earthquakes every year, and that the continental plates, the continental plates are just 60 miles off the coastline. Where would you build reactors there? And they have a 3,000-year legacy of tsunamis up to 300 feet high. And they actually have landmarks on the coastline at the 300-foot level. Don't build houses below this area because of the tsunamis, and these are etched into rocks hundreds of years ago. And so the Japanese media, of course, were out there bragging. The worst of the worst humans is your media, by all means, followed by nuclear scientists, nuclear academics, and the pro-nuclear community. Truly, the most vicious and evil people. When you look up the word vicious and evil, it should have pictures of pro-nuclear. Taiwan lifts Fukushima-related restriction on Japanese food imports. Most of the restrictions, by the way, is already removed. And of course, you can count on despicable media to put those two flags together, as if that somehow signifies one. Taiwan said Wednesday it has lifted the remaining food import restrictions in place since 2011. Allowing the entry of all food approved for distribution in Japan. Well, first off, Japan has been shipping food from the nuclear wasteland. It never stopped shipping food from the nuclear wasteland. It's just... And you're going to pass this on to their children, this poison. In February 2022, Taiwan removed its ban on most food products from Fukushima, Ibaraki, Guma, Tochigi, and the Chiba Prefecture. So it was a total of 14 prefectures that were banned by 55 countries for over a decade. And there's still 14 countries that ban the food from 14 prefectures. So it's not just Fukushima. Tokyo food is banned from 55 countries for a decade too. Tokyo, which is far, far away. And so we're doing this because we know that it's very difficult for people to wrap their mind around this topic. We know that the people in Taiwan deserve to be able to eat healthy food. I forgot to turn on my little piece of equipment there. But curbs remain on certain items like mushrooms and wild game meat. So does it matter if the food is grown in a field or grown in the woods? There is no difference. Growing it in a field doesn't mean it's going to be safer or better or anything close to that when it comes to radioactive fallout. And Japan has picked up 30 million one-ton bags and continue to grow food right alongside of the one-ton bags. They're grown food right alongside the one-ton bags. How can you forgive that? And how can you forget that? How can you see past that and look past that? How can you pretend that you're immune to radioactive poisoning? How does that work in your brain? How do you quantify that or justify it? Because we're talking about life and death. We're talking about poisoning an entire country. As this story plays out tonight, you'll start understanding these nuances. We believe this is an optimistic step that will help reconstruction efforts in the disaster area. How does poisoning everybody in Taiwan help reconstruction efforts in a nuclear wasteland that should be abandoned? Clearly. When you pick up 30 million one-ton bags, you can't remediate these areas. It just simply doesn't work that way. The reactors are still melting down. Just because you can't see it, you can't perceive it, you can't smell it or hear it or feel it or taste it or touch it. But that's what makes it so lethal, is it makes you very, very complacent. Well, while the move will allow imports of products from 5 prefectures, they're still going to be required to submit forms declaring radiation levels, the rubber-stamped forms. All food products from Japan will also require a certificate of origin. We've got tons of headlines of them shipping the food to other prefectures and labeling it there. They're simply not a country you can trust. They have proven themselves thousands and thousands of times that they can't be trusted. They refuse to stop growing food in the nuclear wasteland right from the get-go. As the reactors are melting down, they continue to harvest food. And they knew the difference. The entire story just doesn't seem possible until you realize that the nuclear industry has corrupted all your countries and all your medias and all your universities. However, importers will no longer need to file radiation reports for designated food from Pacific regions, and this is the craziest one imaginable, including tea leaves from Shizuoka Prefecture, which is way past Tokyo. Tea leaves from the Tokyo's here, Fukushima's up there. This is way past Tokyo. This is getting close to Osaka. And Nagoya was also heavily contaminated. How can that not be safe, but everything in between is safe? How does that actually work? This is a fatal mistake, not holding this, because what's the incentive for other countries not to poison you with radioactive fallout food also? And I wish with all my heart other people would talk about this. I can't comprehend why I'm the only one running an educational program. I can't comprehend that. And the burden is overwhelming. I've been at this for a very long time. And there's no excuse for the world not having other people coming on board. There's simply no excuse. Uh, 865,000 cancers in Japan in 2012. An extra 806, almost an extra million cancers in the first year. A spike of 865,000 extra cancers. Not everybody got health care. Not everybody's going to be diagnosed. Cancer is not the only illness or disease or autoimmune deficiency or injury to be manifest from a nuclear meltdown. There's an entire litany of issues and problems. I don't understand why everybody is silent about such an important facet. It's simply not fair. You're talking about poisoning of every species, every animal, every mammal, every insect, every bird, and every human. And not rallying for such an important cause is unconscionable, isn't it? They're going to remove the restrictions they had up until now on tea leaves and tea. So why are they removing the restrictions? Do you really think the radiation has gone away? Is there anybody out there gullible enough to believe that assertion, that the radiation has gone away? An investigating chairman had said one Fukushima can destroy an entire country. Collapse of a whole country is possible. It's even more impossible when all the bloggers worldwide are complicit, refusing to acknowledge there was an event, refusing to have a conversation, I don't understand that. I can't comprehend that. It aches my heart every single day. Why are they that complacent? Pretending that Fukushima didn't happen is no kind of a solution whatsoever. Including tea leaves from a prefecture far, far away from Tokyo. The decision came after the Taiwan Drug and Food Administration, which clearly is compromised and can't protect the population in Taiwan, had drafted an amendment to regulations undergo a 60-day preview period to collect public opinions. So they had a referendum in 2018, but that was only good for 2 years. And 2 years later, they didn't have another referendum. They just removed the restriction on the majority of the food at that time, right? And we covered all of that. And I would direct you to those videos, but the pro-nuclear community took down my other YouTube channel with almost 25,000 subscribers. It was 24,800 subscribers. And I had that for that many subscribers exactly for almost 5 years. I never lost a subscriber, never gained a subscriber in 5 years. At least on this channel, I gained 2 subscribers last month. That's pretty good, isn't it? Can you imagine what kind of weirdo you got to be to censor someone like me? What kind of moron, what kind of inbreed you actually got to be to get that particular job? What kind of nut job you got to be to get the job to attack me and denigrate me and assault me? Really? I'm fighting for their loved ones just as much as yours. And they're doing everything they can to hurt their own loved ones. A medical expert, Japan's safety standards and radiation levels for their own children are unconscionable. You really think they won't poison yours? You really think silence is the solution to stop them from murdering you by your supermarkets? You really think you can detect the radiation in the food at the supermarket and protect yourself and your family by remaining silent? Anybody really think that's the solution? Over 50 countries, it was 55 countries, introduced import curbs. It wasn't import curbs, it was banned by 55 countries and 14 prefectures, not just Fukushima Prefecture. And the people in those countries that done a moral and ethical thing were quickly removed from those positions and replaced by the pro-nuclear community who removed those restrictions in the majority of the countries. Meltdowns at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant in March 2011. Meltdowns. They're still melting down. It wasn't just like a single event. You're talking about 38 reactor cores melted down. There was 8 reactor cores on the top of each of the 4 buildings that melted down. And a meltdown is a catastrophic event that unleashes a disease factory upon your entire biosphere and ecosystem. And there's nothing but replicating cells, including you, that have an autoimmune trigger to defend against it. Most have already lifted them, but neighboring countries like China, South Korea, Russia have yet to do so, according to the Japanese Farm Ministry. Remember, they just removed restrictions on tea from a place 100 miles past Tokyo, south. The whole story is absurd. And you want to see how absurd it is? I'm going to play this little clip of the legacy media, this is just a fraction of the media that done this, where they're claiming they're at the very top of that building, about 140 feet above the stump. And they're getting the fuel out of the pool, which is 8 reactor cores in those 2 fuel pools at the top of each of the buildings. But clearly there's no building left. You got to hear it. If you've never heard it before, and if you've heard it many times, you still got to hear it again to appreciate how evil your media actually is.
Private standing is on top of what used to be reactor building number 4. The whole of this building was blown apart by a huge explosion. Private standing is on top of what used to be reactor building number 4. The whole of this building was blown apart by a huge explosion.
We are here inside Reactor 4 at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant that was severely crippled during the earthquake and tsunami of 2011.
Of the decommissioning work taking place here in Reactor 4.
At the end of our tour, we were checked for radiation exposure. In 4 hours, I received the equivalent of less than a chest x-ray.
1,500 highly radioactive fuel rods inside this pool. They've got to move them outside of this reactor.
They're not on top of that building. They're not even in Japan. They actually have 70 reactors exactly like Japan's Fukushima reactors. And so they just went to whichever one of them was convenient for them and shot that particular video. Taiwan eases restrictions on Japanese food imports imposed over Fukushima. Well, he done that in 2020. They removed almost all the restrictions after a referendum to ban the food by 74% to 10 million people. Ran out. Taiwan lifts Fukushima-related bans. It's not Fukushima, it's radioactive bans. It's radioactive food banned on nuclear food from a nuclear wasteland. Think about this headline from 2014. Officials back from Fukushima. An invisible blanket of death covers everything. It's a nightmare. Taiwan lifts Fukushima-related bans on Japanese food imports. And China and South Korea among places still restrict such products. Just because the media comes out and lies to you, that don't mean you should sacrifice your loved ones. Taiwan said Wednesday it lifted remaining food import restrictions. It removed the majority of it in 2020, allowing the entry of all foods approved for distribution in Japan. Of course, Japan has removed restrictions on everything. They gave farmers Geiger counters that don't work, and SafeCast helped them. Which one of the worst things that ever happened to Japan and everybody else worldwide was SafeCast. The horrible, horrific monsters. Like Asby Brown, for instance. Taiwan said Wednesday it lifted remaining food import restrictions in places since the Fukushima nuclear disaster. There wasn't very many left. Most of it was on just oil stuff. And Ibaraki, Guma, Tochigi, Chiba prefectures. And don't forget Shizuoka in that big shitstorm. There's no sparrows, says birdwatcher in Nagoya. Downtown area was void of any forms of bird. That's up by Osaka. It's way past. It's a couple of 100 miles past Tokyo, south of Tokyo. So Fukushima's up by Sendai. Nagoya is way the hell up here. There's no birds, no sparrows. 2012. Where are the sparrows? That was day 367. So that would have been March the 13th, 2012. Oh, March the 14th, the story came out there. It is there, sure. Taiwan eases restrictions on Japanese food imports over Fukushima. So how many of these headlines said radiation? None. How many of the headlines said radioactive areas? None. How many of them would cut your throat and go through your pockets? Every one of those journalists. Taiwan has eased restrictions on nuclear food imports from a nuclear wasteland in Japan that were introduced following a nuclear event at the Fukushima disease factory in 2011, Japan's murderous agricultural minister said on Wednesday. I'm ashamed of humanity, to tell you the truth, that the world is not fighting back. I can't comprehend it. I just can't comprehend it. Taiwan has lifted an import ban on wild game meat, mushrooms from the wild vegetables from Fukushima and nearby prefectures, providing proper documents on radiation tests and the origins of the products are submitted. Rubber stamped. What a sad, pathetic world we live in, that we don't have a single media to count on, not a single journalist or academic or nuclear scientist we can count on, not one. Not a single one. We don't have any of the big bloggers out there who will direct you to the proper information. They'll feed you the propaganda machines like Arnie Gunnison, Helen Caldicott, Christopher Busby, Geraldine Thomas, Kathleen Higley, and an endless, perpetual stream of lawyers. The reason that and they know I exist, they know the information that I provide. They don't have to refer to me. All I gotta do is take the information and share it. They won't even do that. And the cowards. It's a coward. We live in a coward society. A gutless, spineless, and an idiotic society because they're not immune to radiation. Last week, Tokyo reached an agreement with Beijing over the discharge of wastewater. Discharges of wastewater from a wrecked Fukushima plant. So what they were talking about was on August 24, 2023, they allegedly start releasing water. This was the official announcement. They were releasing water from Fukushima tanks. But the reactors blew up right away. They lost their inventories right away. It's horrifying. It's just horrifying. What have I got done now? Let's check the poll again. We only got 17 likes. We got 27 concurrent viewers. Hi, everybody. We got 18 votes. We're a half an hour into the show, I guess. Will Taiwan cause massive health and death by importing death food from a nuclear wasteland? Of course they will. Can people talking about it help stop it? Yes, of course it will. Can other media providing this documentation? Of course it will. Where's the great David Icke? He's sold everybody, Arnie Gunnison and Helen Caldicott, Christopher Busby, over and over and over. He done it over and over and over. James Colbert and Ryan Dawson. Truly evil people, what they done. I can always look anybody in the eyes and say, I'm not a coward. I'll never be a coward like them. can always hold my head up. I know I'm just a single person, but I work really hard and try to help everybody on the entire planet constantly. And I have little to no support. It's ridiculous. I can't even afford to replace a broken phone. That's how bad off I actually am at this stage. Been abandoned by everything. I've never lost faith in this planet that the world will come to its senses and go to war. I never lost faith a single time. All these years. And all these research expeditions that we were very fortunate enough to go out and complete. And I didn't win every battle. I wasn't given the opportunity to win every battle. I wasn't given the opportunity to win very many battles, but I won quite a few. It's very expensive to go out and do the research expeditions. And we have sacrificed everything for all these years, and I'm humiliated that the world still sits in silence. I'm not confused, I'm humiliated. I can't comprehend. I can't comprehend that the nuclear industry is so evil, it won't even give humanity a chance, or their own children, or their own friends or families a chance to have a future. They will sabotage everything. They got nobody to pick on, and so they got me tortured. Bear with me, my apologies. I should have turned the microphone down, I suppose, before I had my copper cup. One of the best things you could ever get is a copper cup. And they'll sweat like crazy, but they're so good for water, for structuring water. Editing by Andrew Heavens, nice name, eh? And Christina Fincher. So you got two of these edited a paragraph, and they had to put their name there. They had a reporter and editors for a lousy friggin' paragraph, for a couple of sentences. Because when it comes to cover-up, putting your name there counts. When it comes to being a monster in the media, putting your name there so the other monsters can recognize you counts. Tokyo says Taiwan eases import restrictions on Japanese food. This is a peninsula. And there were so many media ran out just to cut your throat. It's quite humbling, actually. Tokyo says Taiwan eases import restrictions on Japanese food. And then it shows you the Taiwanese on the street having a barbecue. Taiwan will ease restrictions on imports of Japanese food products, including seafood. And I must have smurfed up to we don't have a picture of seafood. Even I can do better than these people. Bear with me. Mocking myself here now. I'm going to be the pot calling the kettle black in a minute. If I don't get something out there. There we go. From areas around the stricken nuclear plant. It comes after Beijing announced last week it would gradually resume importing seafood from Japan after imposing a blanket ban last year, not 12 years ago, but last year, over the release of the water from the nuclear power plant. So the official story is they filtered the water, and then last year they started releasing it from 1,000 tanks. The tanks were all built in 2013, and they were all full in 2013. Let me show you that documentation, because that sounds crazy, I'm sure, to the average person. First off, the buildings all detonated in the first week. plumes covered the entire planet within a couple of weeks. And there's many different plumes. There's the plutonium plumes, the neptunium plumes, the cesium, there's the iodine 131, 129s. So the filtration system in 2013, these pictures were released. This is the ELP system. That's the filtration system. And in 2014, at the end of the year, they were hoping to have it operational by the end of the month or 2015. So there's no filtration until at least past 2015. But filtration can't work anyway. But look past that for 1 second, because this video is also from 2013. This is from the same time as that picture. It was a few months later, right? And this is Rupert Winfield Hayes from the BBC. And he's reporting on the 1,000 tanks. He'll talk about that at the end of this short video. It's a very important video. I hope you take the time and watch this video, where it helps you comprehend what's really going on.
The Fukushima plant sits smack in the middle of an underground aquifer. Deep beneath the ground, the site is rapidly being overwhelmed by water. Beneath the surface, water flows downhill and into the basement of the damaged reactor buildings. There it is contaminated with high levels of radiation. To stop the groundwater flowing on into the nearby ocean, engineers are building an underground barrier. But that is causing the groundwater level to rapidly rise. It's now so high the water will soon reach the surface. Then it will start flowing overground into the sea. This week, the company that owns Fukushima, TEPCO, made this disturbing admission.
We understand that this water discharge is beyond our control, and we do not think the current situation is good.
Outside experts say it's now clear TEPCO is incapable of handling the cleanup at Fukushima. It's time for the Japanese government to step in. The situation is already beyond what TEPCO can handle, he says. If it were possible to take proper measures, they would have done it already. It's not as if TEPCO is refusing to do what they can. They're doing everything they can, but there are no perfect solutions. Even if the government does step in, it's not clear what it can do. The only other solution is to pump out the contaminated groundwater and put it in storage tanks. But after just 2 years, the site is already jammed with more than 1,000 giant tanks. Most of them are already full up. At least 400 tons of new water pours into the site every day, and it's going to continue for years and years. Fukushima's water crisis has only just begun. Rupert Wingfield Hayes, BBC News in Tokyo.
So all the tanks were full in 2013. There was 1,000 tanks, right? And degenerate Mari Yamaguchi for the Associated Press reported in 2013 they had 1,000 tanks. Rupert Winfield Hayes and TEPCO acknowledged back then they can't control it. And the reason they can't control it is because the buildings had detonated. How can you control anything after that? The buildings were completely destroyed, and they gutted them. This is the reactor cores and the fuel pools were at the very top of these 19-story, 65-meter buildings. I'm doing this for your good. It's hard to appreciate how crazy it is to do the things I'm doing here every day that I can. And let's face it, I'm not very healthy. It's been a struggle for over a decade trying to keep this story alive and doing the research. And it's heartbreaking that the world hasn't responded appropriately. I'm just doing the best I can. I wish I could do more. I would if I could, and I really would. And I think everybody that knows me understands how true that actually is. I can hurt this nuclear industry significantly if I had a foundation that would support me. And I won't be wasting any time. I'll do it with facts. Taiwan's decision involved lifting import bans on products like wild bird meat, mushrooms, from 5 regions, including Fukushima, on the condition that radioactive material inspection reports and certificates of origins be submitted. Like, first off, they didn't stop growing food in the nuclear wasteland. The seafood worldwide is incredibly contaminated. But they picked up 30 million one-ton bags, for goodness sakes, and just 3% of the land in Japan. It's hard to comprehend it, but it'd be equal to about 150,000 sites like that. There's no way you can get food in Japan that is not incredibly contaminated. 865,000 extra cancers in the first year. AFP could not immediately confirm the news with the Taiwanese authorities, which is really interesting. Because Japan has been known to put out fake headlines in the hopes that that would incite another country to participate. Japan's radioactive agricultural, forestry, and fisheries minister Sakamoto said he welcomes the move as a positive step towards promoting the recovery of a nuclear wasteland. You can't recover a nuclear wasteland. And poisoning everybody with food and getting away with it, you're still a murderer, even though you got away with it. That doesn't mean you're not a murderer. It doesn't mean that you're not insane. The ministry's statements said it would continue to push for all remaining restrictions to be removed. But why would you remove any restrictions on food from a nuclear wasteland? The Japanese government used multiple opportunities to assure Taiwan authorities of the safety of our products based on scientific evidence. So let's look at some of the scientific evidence for a few minutes of Japan. And I apologize because this stuff affects me so much because I live, breathe, eat this stuff 24 hours a day, and I can't escape the reality, not even for a moment. Yeah, the whole story is just, it's crazy. I mean, it's just unbelievable crazy. Just bear with me. Let me see what we got here. Oh, that's right too. That's that folder. I mean, when you look at the story from both sides, their version and the actual facts, you come to the realization quite quickly that the industry is insane. It's actually insane. Seniors are urged to eat the Fukushima rice to help the farmers, who shouldn't be harvesting food in a nuclear wasteland, clearly, and protect the young people. So the seniors should poison themselves so farmers can make a paycheck. And then the farmers should be allowed to poison everybody so they can make a paycheck. And you can imagine how many people a group of farmers can feed. A Tokyo senior, this is Japan Times, by the way, is waging an individual effort to get the elderly people to eat the radioactive rice grown in a nuclear wasteland. So local farmers struggling with rumors, where they picked up 30 million one-ton bags. Here's some pictures that are available online you can download yourself. And this is where they're growing the food. All of these areas, they picked up 30 million of these one-ton bags. They continue to grow rice, and we have so much of this documentation. I've made over 3,000 pictures myself, because there's 150,000 sites, there's only 1,000 pictures. And the majority of them are not even usable. Consumers have shunned the Fukushima rice due to radiation fears stemming from, it was actually 4 nuclear reactors melted down and 8 fuel pools melted down. Each fuel pool had around 4 reactor cores in it. The elderly must eat the Fukushima rice. And they're calling on seniors to place orders on fax or online via social networking sites, including Facebook. And the Japan Times, one of the biggest media mouthpieces too, on top of that for Japan, actually put the number up so that the elderly care homes can poison the elderly people with radioactive food from a nuclear wasteland. And let's be clear about this. This is a nuclear wasteland. But we will continue and go back to that story, we will continue our persistent efforts so that the import restrictions such as certificate submissions be scrapped swiftly. So they don't even want to provide certificates, nothing. Just take the murderous inbreed words that everything is safe and just eat the poison and shut up so that Taiwan can trade cheaper with Japan. How do you reconcile something so evil, I wonder? How does the world sit silently and let it happen? 3 reactors at the Fukushima facility went, and this is a new framing narrative we've been listing. I've been seeing this for a couple of weeks straight now. Went into meltdown. Not meltdowns even, but meltdown. And I see this everywhere, this framing of Fukushima. There's no longer nuclear meltdowns. They'll put went into meltdown, which has no context whatsoever. They got context for all the lies to sell you the lie, but they got no context for the actual meltdown. And then treated water, treat it. Well, you can't treat the 30 million one-ton bags. That's only 3% of the land where they picked it up. There's 150,000 sites like that. How are you going to treat water you poured over a melted reactor core? It doesn't work that way. And I know I see some people claiming that you can separate the radiation out of the water. You can't. You can use all the chemicals you want, but if you try to do it, you can't change the filter. You can no longer get back in the facility. The water is poured over the melted reactor. It's multiple sieverts per liter, which means you can't. If you can take some mildly contaminated water and use chemicals, you might be able to filter something out of it. We're not talking about that. We're talking about lethal doses from a long distance away. And if you aggregate that into a filtration system, you'll have a criticality event, a chain reaction, spontaneous, because you can't filter anything when it's so radioactive. The filter works against you, actually, because it aggregates radiation, so the water going out of the filter now is more radioactive than the water that went in. After 20 minutes or something, you're going to have these particular attributes. So I disrespect people that claim you can filter this stuff. When I see people doing that I know, that worries me. U.S. Navy sailors, you're talking about 5,500 sailors, and every one of them's got a watch on. Our digital watches stopped working at the same time. We were laughing at first. Rice grown near Fukushima plant cleared for sale, 2013. The farmer, I wouldn't eat it. I feel guilty growing it and selling it. I can play you the video if you like. Rice planted 10 miles from Fukushima Daiichi. Residents can't stay in town overnight and intended for sale. Help wanted ad seeks employees that can carry out a conversation. Does that give you confidence in the people that are working there? Plutonium was detected all over a village 25 miles from the nuclear wasteland. Something terrible, dreadful is happening. Catastrophic radiation contamination at the rice field 60 kilometers from Fukushima. At least no crops for 300 years. And Japan never stopped growing it and shipping it worldwide. What do you think they're up to? Why would you want to trust anybody with that legacy and those particular attributes? Report, Japanese rice allegedly causing diarrhea. Officials were told not to send any more donated rice because no one will take the rice whenever there's an earthquake or typhoon and wrecks an area of Japan. They'll send all kinds of nuclear waste they call food to the victims. Shocking that the officials made it mandatory to use Fukushima rice in school lunches. Why do you think all these headlines were showing up? You really think it was safe? Taiwan? Nuclear industry? The pro-nuclear community? It's like Russian roulette. Only 10% of the school lunches in Fukushima tested for radiation. Officials didn't even know testing equipment was available. Does that give you confidence? The school, only 10% of the lunches, and that was usually tested after the kids ate. Because, kids, they never eat everything that's on their plate, right? Japanese mayors say students are gaining knowledge by eating radioactive food in school lunches. Eating radioactive food in school lunches. I was a little horrified at the pro-nuclear community of their willingness to be scumbags. They're really just useful idiots, aren't they? They really don't have any... Bear with me here. There we go. Don't be a chicken, a mayor tells the parents who are concerned their children are eating radioactive lunches. Well, how can you not be eating radioactive lunches in Japan or Taiwan or Canada? Tokyo newspaper, 6 in 10 Fukushima children tested have diabetes. The head of the Tokyo area medical clinic said we're expecting diabetes in the children from the Fukushima radiation. 70% of the children tested in Kanto, a region that includes Tokyo, have radioactive cesium in their urine. Japanese rice, we already covered that one. Radioactivity of 14,000 atoms a square meter in the rice paddies and the crops to be sold in Japan. They're just repackaged and shipped to unsuspecting countries or countries that are pro-nuclear. Over 1 million people in Japan still living in areas with high daily radioactive exposures. Previous cesium limits in rice was just 0.1 atom per kilogram. And now it's thousands, because they only look at cesium. But clearly, if you're only going to look at cesium-137, you're not looking at anything, let alone cesium-137. Because you would include many isotopes. It would never be just cesium-137. Rice leaf concentrated radioactivity is 600 times greater than the rice. It's actually, if the rice leaf concentrated, so does the rice. My apologies. Let's try to get the poll back here. Just having a few little issues. There's a few little issues, but I think I got them. Alright, let me see if we got this. Will Taiwan cause massive health and death by importing food from a Fukushima nuclear wasteland? Duh. Yes, Dana, certainly. Dangerously high levels of radiation detected in rice from date 60 kilometers from the meltdown. Highly levels of radiation in the food. But you can't see it, you can't smell it, you can't hear it. You can't feel it, you can't taste it, you can't touch it per se and identify it. You can't perceive it. And you're supposed to put your fate into a group of inbreeds, like the regulatory agencies are always captured. The one thing the industry doesn't count on is there's people like me out there, and we don't give up. We don't know how to quit. We only know how to get better every single day. And no matter how dismal it gets, we're still here to stick it in their side. TEPCO shares under $2, and the share price will just steadily trend towards zero. And so the players in the industry bought all the shares, and then, of course, they slowly helped cover up the Fukushima. And as the shares rose, they made a fortune. They had a big incentive, a huge monetary incentive, poison you and your friends and your families. And they took a lot of the money and bought shares in pharmaceutical companies. With 865,000 extra cancers in Japan in the first year, it was a pretty good idea, wasn't it? Now over 1,300 cattle suspected radiation contamination have been shipped. None of us suspected it's guaranteed 100% radioactive. Japan TV stars suffering acute leukemia after eating Fukushima products. Because you trust your universities, you trust media, and you get lulled into this complacency. And now you wreck your health, and you wreck everybody's future. Radioactive plague. Radioactive plague for lotus eaters in Japan. Results are astonishing. Yeah, well, everything is radioactive in a nuclear wasteland. That's why it's a radioactive nuclear wasteland. That's why they call it that. Japan lawmaker, 180,000 students may have eaten radioactive beef. And again, whenever you see these Becquerels, this is physical atoms you're talking about, they're only acknowledging cesium, but they're never actually really acknowledging it. It's probably 10,000 times higher. and they'll give you that number. And they're not going to check for any other, even though they can extrapolate, and every academic on the planet in the nuclear industry is capable of doing it. Not one has come out and done it. I mean, it's undeniable that when this picture showed up in the first week, like these reactors looked like that in the first week. And these pictures were released. This one's a little bit later, a few weeks later. But when these pictures come out, there wasn't a nuclear scientist on the planet who didn't know the fuel pools and the reactor cores were gone. There wasn't a single professor in the nuclear industry who didn't know the reactor cores were gone. There wasn't a single nuclear student who is now graduated, is out there cutting your throat, by the way, I might add, that didn't know the reactors were gone and the fuel pools were gone. And you know how many of them come out and warned you? Not a single one. Not a single one. And so this is what it looked like in the first week. At the end of 6 or 7 days, this is the picture they would have took. This would have been in the media. And every nuclear academic and every journalist on the planet would have known also that they were gone. And they took great pleasure in the cutting your throats, making sure you can't have a future and you'll be sick for the rest of your life from it. How do you get any eviler than that? How do you get any more sadistic and twisted and disgusting, despicable than that? Here's one. Every organism in the Fukushima Prefecture is contaminated with radiation. And when they're talking about 1.4 million atoms a kilogram in the worm's excrement, 60 kilometers from the meltdown, ignoring that, that's the only headline you really need to see about Fukushima, is that headline right there. Well, if you could see it, right, this is what it should look like. It's a nuclear wasteland. But you can't see radiation. You can't see the radioactive fallout. You can't see the radioactive products. You can't see the results of the contamination. And that's what they're counting on, that you're not able to visualize it on your own. You're not able to comprehend it. And that they made sure nobody would show up to educate you. Because if anybody shows up, then you're going to be asked the question of why doesn't the media tell us this, and how come the media says that? And then you open up a debate and you open up the facts. The industry can't hide with a debate and with facts. Japan crews face a 100-year battle. So it's infinitely worse than 100 years. It's infinitely worse than 100 years. Bear with me here. Fukushima plume was 1 million atoms per square meter. This is underground. This is radioactive fallout underground in Canada, United States, at 1 million atoms a square meter anthropogenic man-made radiation. 185, like the age of an old whale or a turtle, 185 is an evacuation zone pre-Fukushima, and many places today had nuclear sites. But they won't look for it now because everything is well over 185. So, which means every square meter of Canada, United States, is at least 1 million atoms per square meter. But there was also 20 million particles of radioactive iodine-131 per liter. It fell on the US, but this was a study from Canada. There was another study from Canada, from Ottawa, of 220 million atoms per liter of iodine-129, which doesn't go away for 15 million years. And so even Canada should have picked up billions of one-ton bags of radiation topsoil. Fukushima newspaper editor, we don't report on health risk from radiation. And you don't check it. Check your food in your supermarkets. It's quite interesting. There was two people that went and drove across. One guy connecting dots, I believe it was, drove across Canada. And he was a pump for the nuclear industry, by the way. And the other guy drove across the United States was what the hell was his name? I'll find his video, maybe. I can't remember his name, thank goodness. Comment section will remember it. What's his name, folks? We called him out. He lost all kinds of sponsors when I called him out in one of his videos. He does earthquake videos. What the hell is his name? The little sadistic demon? Yeah, there it is. Dutch. Let me play a video of Dutch. Just bear with me. And so both of these people Dutch drove across the United States, and he made a fortune in donations. And Degenerate Connecting Dots drove across Canada. He made a fortune in donations. Yeah, Dana Nasana got it right, ass wipes. Way to go, Dana. And Effers, that was another. Just bear with me. This should have showed up by now. I must have spelled it wrong. Hang on. Yeah, I did. Here we go. We'll get it. It's worded. Bear with me. He said they faked Fukushima. Now, some of his audio is pretty rough. That's not me or my equipment. That's him. I'm going to put headphones on. I'm going to get out of the way, though. You got to hear him to believe what he's going to say.
I'm not joking. They took the radioactive debris from Fukushima the day after the tsunami hit, and they had it all ready to go. The 60 years worth of stored radioactive fuel, they had it all ready to go on pallets. The reactor was already shut down in maintenance mode when the earthquake hit. Then the tsunami came in, and Fukushima sits about 30 to 40 feet up off the ocean, up on a big mound. And so the wave that came in was only 30 to 40 feet high at the most, so it only got a couple feet of water that came in. They faked the damage, took the debris, the 60 years worth of stored radioactive debris, took it quickly, had to have buried it in the ground somewhere nearby, not far away, I mean, in the same region most likely, and buried it in a casket buried the waste in the casket of tsunami debris, and then blow up the thing 3 days later, and sprinkle some radium around so you get a radioactive debris, slight detection, kind of heavy, making the Geiger counters click around the plant itself, and then everything goes away within a few years. No radiation reaches the shores of the United States, no radiation detected. I drove all the way across the country taking readings, and here we are.
He drove all the way across the country taking readings. There's a lot going on. What he was just saying. He faked everything. There was no tsunami hit the site. He's reading it off a screen, right? This is the site. Does that look like a couple of feet of water to you? It's quite frightening when people like that are so willing to cut your throat.
Still can take readings, and it's still incredibly low. It's below what we would consider normal range.
Now, I showed you some of the numbers. He can't find that radiation, right? He can't find 1 million atoms per square meter of xenon-133. He couldn't find the 20 million particles of iodine-131 in another study. He couldn't find the 220 million atoms. These are catastrophic numbers.
Still can take readings, and it's still incredibly low. It's below what we would consider normal range. Normal range being 30 to 40 clicks per minute. So that being said, the fish is fine. And I've already done tests on the fish too. So the whole Fukushima thing's a scam, guys. They took that debris, buried it in the ground over there, and are collecting money for a thing that they blew up. And all they did was blow it up and sprinkle a little radium around the area or whatever. And
so all they did was blew it up and sprinkle a little radium around the area. There is no event. That's what he's saying to you. There is nothing happened. Everything. They took it out of the fuel pool from a building that don't even exist. Like how, I exposed that particular video of him, and he lost a whole bunch of sponsors. He lost thousands of subscribers. He's still in business today. He's still going strong today. And he's reading it off his screen. Somebody wrote it for him. His dad was heavily involved in the military, right? Let me see if I can find something to show you that. Because I went and listened to a few of his... his dad worked for the military.
My father developed forward-looking infrared with a team of other scientists from Boeing McDonnell Douglas back in the, I guess it was like the late 70s, early 80s now.
And he used to talk in the same interview, he used to talk about how as a kid he made all these contacts that he kept in contact as he got older. Here's the last
This is what I've got on the inside. Look at that. Port-locked, wild smoked salmon.
This is something somebody sent them, right, from the Pacific Ocean on the west coast.
Now, before anybody says anything about Fukushima, don't even talk to me about Fukushima. I've got the Geiger counters. I could do tests if I really wanted to worry. You don't have to worry because Fukushima was a total scam. Total scam. 100%. The fish are fine. The ocean's fine. It's all scam.
And he actually came to my site after he came back from a research expedition and told me I didn't know how to do an expedition. Told me I was totally wrong. I had to go lift up the rocks because nothing lived on top of the rocks. This is even though, like, the evidence I show, let me show it to you. So I go out on research expeditions for 6 years, 4 to 5 months a year. And I hit this from every direction. It's hard to appreciate how much time and energy and effort actually goes into the things I do. I don't talk about everything. And my site, though, my other site, was full of this documentation, these research expeditions. They took that down, obviously, after destroying me for years and years. So what I found, he said, I couldn't find those species because I didn't flip over the rocks. These are the before and after pictures. He was saying species don't live on the rocks, they only live under the rocks. So according to him, the species don't exist, they only exist underneath the rocks, and that's why I didn't find anything. Do you believe that guy? Do you believe that he's looking at on videos with this stuff in it, he's commenting, say, I don't know what I'm doing because I was supposed to lift up the rocks. On my videos, coming commenting on my videos, saying I didn't try to find the species because I didn't lift up the rocks. But there was an incredible diversity. You didn't need to lift up rocks. And by the way, I do lift up rocks. Of course I do, because if I don't lift up the rocks, I won't find anything. There is nothing left on the rocks. And so under the rocks, you will find baby crabs and you'll find baby eels. Catfish, maybe. Babies, right? But you won't find anything else. And I know because I've done it for 6 years. The species to your left are exterminated. And we know that because the reactors blew up. They covered the entire planet with radioactive fallout. They pretended they were in the buildings that don't exist. We went on the expeditions. Well, I was out there by myself for 5 to 6 months a year. And the reason we went back year after the year to see if the species to your left came back or recovered. Because they didn't. Because the reactors actually blew up. The radioactive fallout actually covered the entire planet. And my heart has been broken for so many years. And I have a obligation to fight for the species and fight for everybody else. Because the academic and the journalist world is nothing but cowards. And traitors and monsters. And the world deserves somebody that's honest. Before Fukushima, 100 atoms a kilogram of cesium is nuclear waste, but after it's 100 atoms a kilogram of cesium is safe to eat. It was 0.1 atoms a kilogram pre-Fukushima in Japan. Nuclear waste being processed during an explosion in France in 2011 had radioactivity of 17 atoms a kilogram. And then the French put out a study on Fukushima radioactive fallout that you desperately need to know about. I'm going to provide it for you in a few seconds. And so their study was on cesium-137 and disposition over Canada and the United States. Well, worldwide. But that's who got hit first, right? It was Canada, United States. I'll bring it up for you in a second. I'm just looking for it. We got it right here in the big pile. And I should come across it any moment here. And I put it in multiple places to make it easier, but it's still hard as hell. Okay, we're in the right direction. I'll play this and then I'll find the rest of the study for you. This is the model of 1 million to 10 million atoms per cubic meter of air of cesium-137. Here we go, I got it. And so this is from the French government, but yet they were packaging radiation at 17 atoms a kilogram. But their study was showing 1 million to 10 million atoms, 1 million times normal, but also 1 million to 10 million atoms of cesium-137, which, by the way, not only causes cancer, but immediately damages the heart muscle. You're seeing a lot of people dying of heart attacks, right? Of cesium-137. So that model is based on 30 days, or 31 days. So it's a continuous plume. It's like a snowstorm coming out of Japan. It never stops snowing. The snow continuously comes out till the whole planet is one big snowstorm. The snow never stops coming out. It never melts, and it never goes away. And then flip that and call it radiation instead of snow, and then you're actually being honest. This is a catastrophic event. And people like Dutch Sink and that other scumbag from British Columbia who stalked me for years and years and years. And he'd done everything like the rest of them to destroy my reputation and to leave you with a shadow of a doubt. That's all they really got to do, right? Because the average person doesn't have much tolerance for anything unless it's 1 minute long. And even then they become intolerant. They click on to the next video. So most of my videos are to help everybody, but in particular, they're there to educate the policymakers and the investors. Because you don't have to convince everybody in the country that nuclear is bad. You have to convince the policymakers and the investors, right? Radiation checks of food in Japan are 1% of what Belarus checked in the past year. In other words, Japan is not checking. So Japan is now allowed to ship whatever they want to Taiwan. Taiwan's regulatory agencies and government agencies and safety agencies have all decided to take kickbacks, I guess, and sacrifice the population of Taiwan so that they can reap some monetary benefits. Stringent regulation on food imports. Well, clearly there's no regulation on the food imports. They're not checking food. They don't have any independent checkers. And same as Japan, they had Safecast. And Safecast, of course, had homemade Geiger counters, garbage Geiger counters. Their job was to cover it up. Why did they show up in Japan? Japan, the third biggest economy on the planet, wasn't capable of checking on their own. So they needed some idiot organization, which is now on the stock market, I might add. And they benefited from this. They made hundreds of millions of dollars at the head of it, which were initially imposed after the Fukushima nuclear disaster. The easing of restrictions was confirmed by Japan's agricultural minister. And this media that publishes this, where are they to? Devis Course? These people are insane, pro-nuclear community. They're insane. Aimed at normalizing trade relationships with Japan. So they're going to poison everybody in Japan so they can have trade relationships with Japan. The move signifies a betrayal in Taiwan's import policies aimed at poisoning the entire population of Taiwan. It's impossible not to. But taking food from a nuclear wasteland, how do you get that stupid? Well, you don't. You have to be bought off. There has to be an incentive. The biggest problem with the academic world, of course, and journalism is there's no integrity. And they put out 2 stories a day on Taiwan easing Fukushima food imports. 2 stories. And that's typical. A lot of times you'll see 4 or 5 stories in one day on a single subject like this, but not other subjects. When it comes to radiation cover-up, they'll put out multiple stories each time. The ban lift includes wild game, mushrooms, wild vegetables from Fukushima nearby areas, other prefectures. Contingent on documentation of radiation tests and product origins, which is never going to be honest. And this is another one of the pictures they put together trying to make it look beautiful, right? To the vulnerable of society. Taiwan has relaxed its restrictions on food imports. Well, they've done that in 2020. After the referendum, the ban of food ran out. They didn't have another referendum. They just went ahead and accepted food from a nuclear wasteland. The shake of a hand, right? We covered that extensively in 2020. The relaxed restrictions permit the import of wild game meat, mushrooms, and wild vegetables. So they just regurgitate the same narrative over and over and over. Nuclear power and coal power sites in the U.S. could host 69 gigawatts of new nuclear capacity. That's quite an interesting headline. That came out following another headline that a few days back was that global solar power installations may hit 660 gigawatts in just 12 months. So you had nuclear and coal power sites could host 269 gigawatts of new nuclear capacity, which in order to build 269 gigawatts of nuclear in just the United States alone, it would take them at least 100 years. It was over double that in 12 months of renewables, and we're only talking about solar powered. That's an incredible statement, folks, right there. 660 gigawatts of just solar was added to the grid this year. Expect that to grow by 40% next year and 40% the year after. Could super yachts lead to nuclear surge? Super yachts. Could super yachts lead to nuclear surge? You're going to have a bunch of Cheronobyls out there floating around. So if somebody got a lot of money and can buy a super yacht, they can have a nuclear reactor, can they? You really don't think that's not going to go south? You got any idea how many of them sinks? You got any idea how idiotic it is to be on the same boat as a nuclear reactor? You can't, like... They done a test on a nuclear reactor in Canada, and they went to a mine 150 miles away, not kilometers, but 150 miles away, and they went down into the granite, because we're the northern shield, right? We're on granite. So they went there's an abandoned mine, so to speak, and they went down a little over a mile into this abandoned mine. So they were 150 miles away and a mile deep in the ground, and they still identified antineutrinos that were coming from the nuclear reactor 150 miles away. And you want to be on a boat? Now, we know from the history of the nuclear industry how much shielding you got to put around these things. So you're going to incredibly increase the weight of that boat, that which gives it instability, of course. But, I mean, my goodness, with the hurricanes, cyclones, and typhoons now regularly hitting over 200 miles per hour, and we have so many storms now that have blown entire tropical resorts full of yachts up on the rocks from hurricanes, cyclones, and typhoons, because they'll hit 200 mile per hour sustained winds, and then the gusting is almost 300 mile per hour winds. And this is all documented post-Fukushima. It's not something we've seen pre-Fukushima. And what's the point of getting a yacht anymore when all the whales are emaciated? We almost got another marine die-off video ready to go. Bikini Atoll, nuclear imperialism and ecocide in the Pacific. Let me bring up some stuff on the Bikini Atolls right quick here, because this is really something what they've done. It was equal to a Nagasaki bomb a day for 12 years, the amount of radiation they released there. It was equal to a Nagasaki bomb a day for 12 years. I thought I had that right there. They also done biological weapons there too at Bikini Atoll, the Marshall Islands, I should say. The radiation in 2019 study, you can go read that study, July the 30th, 2019, extending over 1 million square kilometers, is still too radioactive to be habitable. And if you go and read this story, Forgotten Fallout, the unfulfilled promise of the nuclear justice for the Marshallese. That story, I believe, is this year's story, isn't it? Equivalent of dropping 1.6 Hiroshima bombs every day for a dozen years. 1.6 Hiroshima bombs, not Hiroshima, but Nagasaki, because Hiroshima was the only uranium bomb. The Nagasaki and every other bomb since is a plutonium bomb. So it's equal to 1.6 Nagasaki bombs a day for 12 years. And these are nuclear craters. And so one of the craters, they built a so-called cap for it. It is not waterproof, it's not airproof. And then they abandoned it. The Americans abandoned it. The American nuclear industry, I should say. The nuclear industry in every country is just unbelievably insidious, isn't it? Australia uranium miners soar after U.S. nuclear plant revival deal. This was a craziest story imaginable. So there's a rumor that 3 Mile Island might start up. They're going to do years and years of refit, and there's nothing solid. They can't guarantee anything. Regulatory agencies, there's all kinds of things have to be done. So what Australia, the typical, whenever we see any story on nuclear, we see this stock market scam will show up. So there was alleged a single nuclear plant, a single reactor, not a nuclear plant, like multiple reactors, but a single reactor might come back online in the future. So what the Australia done was the media promoted that story as if it was a renaissance in nuclear. And shares of the Australian uranium miners surged for a second day on Tuesday this week after Microsoft signed a deal to help resurrect a U.S. nuclear reactor, not a plant, but a reactor. Fueling hope that a growing demand from the big tech firms for green power could fuel demand for nuclear energy. And a deal between the U.S.-based utility Constellation Energy and Microsoft to revive a single unit at 3 Mile Island nuclear plant triggered trades on heavily shorted Australian-listed uranium stocks. And the idea was to artificially inflate uranium stocks, which would motivate more investors worldwide to start investing in the stocks, which will artificially inflate it a bit more. This will go for a couple of weeks, and then the bottom falls out again, and everybody who invested lose their shirts. We see over and over and over every year, multiple times a year, we see the same scam. And that's why they've done it that way. Microsoft probably has no intention of doing it. But it's a great way to sell. If you buy the stocks in a couple of weeks when they drop back down, all you got to do is wait for them to do the scam again, and you can sell it and make a good profit. And that's what they've been doing for 12 years. You had Perth-based Boss Energy, which is targeting uranium outputs for 2025. Just because they say it don't mean they're actually going to do it. And their stocks went up 11.6 on Tuesday and then 8% for the previous day. So almost 20% stock raise in just 2 days based on a complete fabrication. Paladin Energy, Australia's biggest pure play uranium miner in terms of the market, advanced 9.5% after roughly 5% gain in the previous session. So their stocks went up almost 14%. And Paladin went actually bankrupt after taking $600 million from Australia taxpayers. And then they declared bankruptcy. Now they're back again. Quite interesting the scams these guys have pulled. Well, Deep Yellow jumped 8.5% to scale a more than 7-week high. And Paladin, by the way, is hoping that will allow them to carry out the rest of the year with the money they just made. They know the stocks are going to dip straight back down again in a week or less, and they'll come back in and buy up the stocks when it flat lines, and they'll do the same scam in 2 or 3 or 4 weeks. Rinse and recycle. They do it over and over and over. The Globe and Mail was doing it 3 times a week here in Canada. And they attacked me when I came back from a research expedition. All the 3 stocks were among the top 5 gainers in the benchmark index on Tuesday. So, why would they gain stocks when it was just a simple, this? They don't know for sure if that reactor can come back online. They pushed it in the media nonstop, and people bought the stocks. The stock sellers pushed it to unsuspecting buyers. If you're not part of the crew, when you go to invest within a stock market, they're going to rob you. And they might give you some gains for a couple of months, and then they'll rob you. There has been fresh buying interest in the sector that have been waiting for a catalyst. So the catalyst was a rumor. We see it over and over and over. Every couple of weeks we see this narrative. Here's a rumor, and now all of a sudden all the media is like, there's a nuclear renaissance, buy. And which causes the stocks to start climbing, and people buy into it because they don't understand the background. And a week later, of course, that has to fall apart, and it does every single time. And then the people who worked all their lives in factories and invested their money in it, they're going to go, oh, crap, I got to sell now because I don't want to lose my lifetime savings. Adding that seasonal buying would likely to keep the sector buoyant for the remainder of the calendar year. So this is what saved the nuclear industry in Australia, was a false story. And they stole the money from all the investors in order to keep themselves afloat. You don't really think they're going to do that again when it works every single time? and that the stock market itself won't hold them accountable because they're making a fortune off it. I think it's unconscionable that they do this constantly for the last 13 years. We see this every month for the last 13 years. And then they put in this other caveat. Demand expectations for uranium has climbed after more than 20 nations vow to triple nuclear capacity by 2050. The only thing that tripled is renewables. Nuclear is still going backwards. At the Constipated Party Conference of Parties 28 Climate Summit in Dubai late last year. Well, just because 20 countries, administration at that time, said they were going to do it, the next administration is going to pull the plug on that. Most of those countries, the administrations will pull the plug on it. Right? That's the problem with these kinds of narratives, is the next administration will go the opposite way, and 4 years later, the next administration might go back to the old way, and they'll just play this game over and over and over, rinse and recycle. And so now the time demand could lift to over 500 million pounds, but there is no nuclear renaissance. There's a renewable renaissance. 660 gigawatts this year alone in just solar power, not counting geothermal, not counting anything else. Just solar panel. That's an incredible, not counting wind or anything else. So you're looking at maybe 1,000 gigawatts this year in renewables. The Biden administration finalized a plan to expedite permitting and expand solar in the western public lands. You know why? Because there's 660 gigawatts worldwide came online this year in a lousy 12 months. How's nuclear going to compete with that? Why, red-hot nuclear stocks could easily make you rich. And so this pig, Luke Largos, this monster really, this thief, this degenerate, he's trying to sell you with try to keep the uranium stocks rising for a couple of more days. That's what this is all about. And that's how it rose in the last few days in the first place, is people like that. They bought it last week, and they'll sell it in another few days. They'll sell their shares because they rose up, right? And they make a fortune. And then they'll take the profit, put it in one bank account, take the money they're using, and in a week's time when everybody sells your share because it's flatlined, they'll go in and buy it and do it again, and then it'll come out in 2 or 3 weeks with another headline like this, if there's even a little bit bump in the false narrative. It's really something that we've seen this for 13 years and nobody's ever been held accountable. And he tells so many lies, I'm not going to go through it. It's too disappointing for me to go through. I'm just not going to do it. But Taiwan lifting all restrictions, that's heartbreaking. And devastating, isn't it? How's everybody doing? I'll remind everybody that you can donate. It's in the bottom of my description. You can donate directly to me on both links. One at PayPal, which is the better way to donate, and one through the credit cards, which is, we've never had an issue in 11 years with that site, not a single issue. I don't have any idea of that information. It goes through a separate, large credit card corporation that does all the banking, right, with Stripe. So everything is legit. But we raised $30 last night from Kevin G. Bless you, Kevin. And how do we fund this? The only operation on the planet doing an educational program if people don't donate. If you had 100 people donating $10 and $15 a month, you'd be surprised what I can do. You'd be surprised. And we have a huge fleet to maintain. And some years you don't get a lot of use, but you still got to do all the maintenance. You still got to go through all the motions. And if anything breaks, this whole operation falls apart. And I'm not willing to let that happen, and I don't think that the world would if they understood what was going on. And, you know, for goodness sakes, if you know anybody from Taiwan, send them this video. And tell them, find somebody to translate it if you can't. And get the video out to the Taiwanese people. Because if they see this video, they will rise up. And they deserve an opportunity not to be poisoned by an industry that has... His entire legacy is about poisoning everybody. Will Taiwan cause massive health? I forgot to put L there, my apologies. And death by importing nuke food from the Fukushima nuclear wasteland. Well, yes, it will, Dana. And that's the poll tonight. Thank you, everybody. And if you make it this far, don't forget to give us a thumbs up. It costs us very little and might go a long way. It's a good way to, at least something you can do, is thumbs up this video. And share the video, for goodness sakes. The most important stories on the planet, period, bar nothing, is about nuclear and the crimes against humanity and the 8 million species. The world deserves an opportunity to survive. I hope everybody had a great day. Great day tomorrow. And we're going to play a song. I posted a link in the description and in the comments section earlier for James Lucid. Got a anti-radiation song into a contest. And all he needs to do is get views. And so that's another thing you can do. And here's another one of his songs one of his original songs he put out about a troll that trolled us for over 10 years. And we nicknamed Calm Down Charlie. I'm going to play that song. Last night got cut off a little early. My apologies for that. I just got to check the volume. We'll see everybody hopefully tomorrow night. Tomorrow's Thursday. Have a great night.
In the Tokyo Bureau, swirling smoke and neon beams. Chicago division fueled by heated dreams. Calm down, Charlie calls in, voice smooth as silk. Says, Dana, you're dreaming, don't cry over spilt milk. On Dana Durnford show, the chatter's turning wild, but Charlie shoots it down with that cool cat style. Unit 3's no killer, no harm to see life. He chuckles in the static, cuts through the strife. Oh, calm down, Charlie, with his nuclear charm. He says starfish are just fine, there's no alarm. His words dance on airwaves with a confident glow. Calm down, Charlie steals the whole radio show. With a snap and a grin, Charlie's voice so clear scatters the dread, dispels all the fear. Mux didn't hurt, he croons with a sigh. Science is for thinkers, not a whim or lie. Though Dana and the crowd may shout and roar, Charlie's unfazed, he's heard it all before. His swinging rationale, like a soothing song, says, hold on to logic, we gotta stay strong. Oh, calm down, Charlie, with his nuclear charm. He says starfish are just fine, there's no alarm. His words dance on airwaves with a confident glow. Calm down, Charlie steals the whole radio show.